So I'll have to kind of recap everything. Okay, 4 formulas, right? Moles ke, these are the basic ones. In equation is like a recipe, and it tells you the ratio in which the reactants and products, the reactants going to react and the products are going to be produced. And it's the ratio of moles. It's the ratio of quantity. It's the ratio of number of particles. It's not the ratio of mass, not the ratio of volume. So, okay, 4 sodiums react with 1 oxygen. So that's the ratio. So we're counting everything in moles. So if you know the moles of any one of the substances, you can figure out the moles of all the other substances in the equation. And this is pretty much all you have to do in a moles question. If you know the moles of this, 0.15 divided by 2 into 3, that would give you this moles. 0.15 divided by 2 into 1, that would give you this moles. 0.15 divided by 2 into 6 would give you this moles. And then we talked about limiting the excess. Sometimes what would happen is that 2 reactant moles would be known, but one of them would be in excess. Excess means more than the required amount. So 20 moles reacting with 35 moles, that's not possible. 20 will only react with 20 because the ratio is 1:1. So 20 would only react with 20. इसका मतलब है 15 moles are in excess और वो बच जाएंगे, ठीक है? They will be left at the end of the reaction. So you always use the limiting reactant moles. That's it. I said then. So we're going to do a couple of questions now, and we'll bring in those formulas as well. So for example, now your knowledge for equations about equations is a must. So we're going to revise equations shortly after this, and I'll send you the PDF for that as well. But I'll just do one questions. So pretty much all moles questions are going to be like this: that 20 grams of what, of calcium carbonate. You forget calcium carbonate. Let's take magnesium carbonate. Reacts with what? Reacts with phosphoric acid. And exactly, it reacts with phosphoric acid and exactly 100 cm³ of phosphoric acid. So it reacts with 100 cm³ phosphoric acid, and that's it. That's the only information that's given, and you're being asked to go and calculate. So you're supposed to calculate the following. So calculate number 1, the concentration of phosphoric acid. So then you need number 2, which is the mass of the salt produced. And number 3. So you got number 2. Number 3 is the volume of carbon dioxide, that is. So volume of CO2 produced. Now these are the things that need to be done. Now all the question revolves around an equation. So you need to know what the equation of the reaction is going to be. It's going to be magnesium carbonate reacting with phosphoric acid. And as a result, a salt would be produced, and that salt would be magnesium phosphate, which is going to be Mg3. And PO4 would be twice, plus water plus carbon dioxide. So right after this, we'll revise a bit of equations. They are very important for solving a question on moles. So you should be aware of all the equations. Now, and it should be a balanced equation. So the balanced equation in this case would be 3 mgs, 2 phosphoric acids, and I think 3 water molecules and 3 carbon dioxide molecules. So that's the ratio in which things are reacting. Now, the information that's provided is that you're given 20 grams of magnesium, and you're given the volume of phosphoric acid, which is 100. That's it. So I stated previously that if you're able to figure out the moles of any one of the substances in the equation, that's the only information that's provided. Now, based on this, with volume, you can't do much. I mean, this is not the volume of a gas, it's the volume of a solution. So you can't find out the moles using this, but you can find the moles of magnesium carbonate, and that we can do easily. So moles would be mass divided by AR. So moles would be 20 grams, and those 20 grams are going to be divided by mg, which is I think 24.1 in the periodic table. Carbon is 12, and you have to take exact masses that are given in the periodic table. So this comes out to be, I think, 84.1. So can anyone find out what the moles are? क्या आ रहा है? What's 20 divided by 84.1?
Sir, 0.237.
ठीक है, so you're getting 0.23. नहीं, 7 के बाद क्या था?
Sir, 7 के बाद 8 था.
तो 238 होगा. ठीक है, so you're getting 0.23. I mean, that's the value. ये मैं यहाँ पे ना कर भी लूँ कि just to show you. So this is how you're going to do this. It's कितना था mass? कितना mass दिया था मैंने? 20 grams?
20.
अच्छा, 20 divided by 84.1. ठीक है, so I'm getting this value. Like on my paper, I'm going to write it up to 3 significant figures, 0.238. Calculator पे I'm not going to round this on my calculator. यहाँ पे तो 0.238 लिख लिया. Now I can figure out the moles of all the other substances. If I want to find out the moles of this, it's going to be 0.238 divided by 3 into 2. That's it. So 0.238. I'm going to keep the same number. Divide by 3. So calculator पे change ना करो. Divide by 3 and into 2. And that gives me 0.159 moles. ठीक है? So this comes out to be 0.159 moles. So remember, don't round off things on your calculator. लिखते में तो round off करना पड़ेगा, लेकिन don't round it off on your calculator. Now you've got moles of this, और carbon dioxide का भी पता करना है. Mass of salt. So you can so it's going to be 0.59 divided by 2 into 1. So इसको divide by 2 and we get 0.0793 moles for this. और फिर carbon dioxide का भी पता करना है. So that would be the same as the first one. So it's going to be 0.238. It's going to be 0.238 moles. So it's going to be 0.238 moles. So anyways, now he's asking you to figure out the concentration of phosphoric acid. So formula क्या था? It was N is equal to C into V. So that means concentration would be moles divided by volume. और दोनों चीजें हमारे पास. So it's basically 0.159 divided by the volume, which is 100 cm cube, जो कि dm cube में 0.1. It's going to be 0.1 dm cube. So if I solve this, what do I get? 0.159 divided by 0.1. What would I get? $1.59 mole per. So I'm getting 1.59 mole per dm cube. And then he's also asking for the mass of magnesium phosphate. So again, how do you figure out the mass? It's so how do you figure out the mass? Moles was mass divided by MR, right? Or AR. So that means mass would be moles, which is 0.0793 into the MR. MR is key calculator. It's going to be 24.1 times 3. P is 16 into 4 is 64. P is that's 95 into 2. I mean, P is 31. Oxygen is 16. So can anyone tell me what the mass is? What are we getting? So we are getting 20 point. And the last thing is they were asking for the volume of CO2 produced. And it should be mentioned, is it at RTP or not? So I'm going to add it to the question that they're trying to measure it at RTP. So at RTP, the formula for gases is moles is volume of gas divided by, remember, you have to be careful that the volume of a gas is a different thing and the volume of the solution is a different thing. So don't mix the two up. Remember which one is the solution. So if you're given a volume, you don't apply this formula. This is only for volume of gas. So the volume of the gas would be 24 dm cube multiplied by 0.238, which is, what do we get for that? कितना आ रहा है इसका? Once. So it's 5.712 dm cube. Okay. So just to go back on the question, remember most questions would be revolving around an equation. And this is how you're going to solve it. You find the moles of any one substance, which in this case, we were able to figure out the moles of magnesium carbonate. And using that, you would be able to figure out the moles of all the other substances. The rest is just formulas. They might ask you to figure out the concentration. So moles pata, volume pata, find the concentration. They might ask you to figure out the mass. So moles, if you know the moles, you can just multiply by MR. And if the moles are given, you can find the volume of the gas by just using a formula. That's it. So the rest of the things are just formulas. Achha, we'll just have a quick revision of all the equations that because equations are important. So I'll share this.
Sir,
हाँ जी.
सर वो जो वॉल्यूम का आपने क्वेश्चन आंसर था सर वो जरा दिखाएं सर.
हाँ.
सर उसके अंदर वो आपने ऐसे भी कह सकते हैं कि PV equals to nRT.
नहीं, अगर वो RTP लिखा हुआ है फिर तो वो करने की जरूरत नहीं है.
और सर ये स्टैंडर्ड कंडीशन में ये इक्वेशन
क्या मतलब?
सर वो रूम टेम्परेचर एंड प्रेशर 25 मतलब वो जो
हाँ,
स्टैंडर्ड कंडीशन.
ये तो RTP लिखा हुआ है ना, स्टैंडर्ड नहीं कहते उसे, रूम टेम्परेचर एंड प्रेशर कहते हैं. वो एनर्जेटिक्स पे स्टैंडर्ड कंडीशंस कहते हैं. ठीक है, वैसे एक ही चीज है. ठीक है. अच्छा खैर, ये क्विक ना ये एक रिकैप हो जाए कि what are your equations. ठीक है, remember these are all the equations that you must know. Okay, metal reacting with acid produces salt plus. H2, a metal oxide or a metal hydroxide, that's a base. It reacts with acids to produce salt and water. Metal carbonates, when they react with acids, produce salt, water, and carbon dioxide. Ammonia reacts with acids to produce ammonium salts. Ammonium salts also react with bases to form salt, water, and NH3. Ionic precipitation है, metal carbonates की decomposition है. Yeah, carbonate would decompose to form metal oxide and carbon dioxide. A nitrate would decompose to form an oxide plus NO2 plus O2. Group 1 nitrates हमारे कोर्स में नहीं है, लेकिन उसकी decomposition इस तरीके से होती है. Metal plus water produces metal hydroxide plus H2 gas is given off this displacement reaction के more reactive displaces a less reactive. और फिर आपके पास metal hydroxides की decomposition है. तो ये सारी equations जो है ना, they must be on your fingertips. What happens के the acid base equations, decomposition equations, the metal reacting with water, ठीक है. So I'll send all of this, ठीक है, but we'll अच्छा फिर फॉर्मूला से बेसिक से स्टार्ट कर लेते हैं. इन एन आयनिक कंपाउंड you've got a positive ion, you've got a negative ion, जिसके अंदर there's a crisscross method. crisscross method क्या है कि अगर मैग्नीशियम है और नाइट्रोजन है, नाइट्रोजन इज इन ग्रुप 5, इनके चार्जेस कहाँ से पता लगते हैं? यहाँ से पता लगते हैं कि ग्रुप 1 is +1, ग्रुप 2 is +2, ग्रुप 13 is +3, ग्रुप 4 could be +4 as well as -4, और आपका जो ग्रुप 15 है that's -3, 16 is -2, 17 is -1. ट्रांजिशन मेटल्स के वेरिएबल चार्जेस होते हैं, यूजुअली दैट्स रिटन इन द नेम, आयरन 2 या आयरन 3 इस तरह करके लिखा होता है. अच्छा अब ये कि crisscross method, remember that when you have a positive and negative ions, to balance out the electrons gained and lost. हाँ जी
सर असल में मेरा कनेक्शन लॉस हो गया था. आपने कहाँ से स्टार्ट किया था ये?
नहीं, स्टार्ट से ये अभी तो बिल्कुल बेसिक वो इक्वेशंस हमने की थी कि सारी इक्वेशंस जो है ना ये फिंगर टिप्स पे होनी चाहिए, ठीक है, क्योंकि it could be decomposition of carbonates or nitrates, ammonia with an acid, मतलब all these acid based reactions they must be on your fingertips. ये अभी हम बारी बारी go through भी कर लेते हैं, ठीक है. तो हमने फिर वो पढ़ा था कि आयंस के ऊपर चार्जेस के +1, +2, +3, और then you have the negative ions starting at group 15. तो नेगेटिव आयंस का जो नाम होता है ना वो चेंज हो जाता है. नाइट्रोजन becomes nitride, fluorine becomes fluoride, oxygen becomes oxide. So there's a positive ion, there's a negative ion, they all stick together. उसमें आप crisscross करते हो, ये Al2O3 होगा, this one be Al1F3. Why do you do crisscross? Because the electrons that are lost, +2 का मतलब है 2 electrons lost, -3 means 3 electrons gained. The electrons must be equal. So if you have 3 magnesiums, electrons lost would be 6. If you have 2 nitrogens, the electrons gained would also be 6. तो ये इनको ना equal बनाना है, so which is why you do crisscross. तो नेगेटिव आयन का जो नाम होता है ना उसका नाम के एंड में आइड आ जाता है, आइड, IDE, which is different from 8 and 8. T वाले नहीं, D वाला, IDE. That means अकेला एलिमेंट है, that's it. But it's a negative ion. तो ये सारे फॉर्मूलास थे. और फिर वो था कि ये तो आयनिक कंपाउंड्स की प्रॉपर्टीज थी. आयनिक कंपाउंड्स दे फॉर्म जायंट आयनिक लैटिसेस. इनकी प्रॉपर्टीज अभी हमने नहीं करनी, मतलब वो ब्रिटल होते हैं और सारा वो सारी चीजें ना. अच्छा ये वो चार्जेस थे कि ग्रुप 1, and then you have polyatomic ions. Polyatomic ions are molecules that end up gaining or losing electrons. For example, OH है. OH में by making a single bond, oxygen's outer shell is not complete. Oxygen needs 2 electrons, so it might gain 1 electron from some metal. तो वो फिर -1 बन जाएगा because the molecule ended up gaining an electron from, it ended up gaining electron from a metal. Or you've got anyways you've got these ions: hydroxide, sulfate, sulfide, nitrate, nitrite, phosphate, phosphide, carbonate, ammonium, hydrogen sulfate. These should be on your fingertips as well. अगर वो कह रहा है कैल्शियम हाइड्रोजन कार्बोनेट का रिएक्शन हो रहा है, you don't have time, it should be on your fingertips. You should know what calcium hydrogen carbonate is, and you should know what the formula is. So if you haven't yet memorized this, you should memorize this. अच्छा फिर उनके formulas भी उसी तरह बनते हैं. It's just crisscross, but polyatomic ion put a bracket around it. Like if you have aluminium carbonate, aluminium is +3, carbonate is -2, so that's it's going to be Al2CO3 thrice. So the polyatomic ion is one entity. अगर वो 2 या 3 करने हैं तो उसके ऊपर ब्रैकेट डालना है, ठीक है. Aluminium hydroxide, OH thrice, ammonium phosphate, crisscross, ammonium becomes 3, and remember the ratio that you get at the end, that should be the simplest ratio. If it's 2:3, that is the simplest ratio. But if it comes out to be 2:2, 2:4, which in this case you are getting that, but less than +4 है, CO3 -2 है. So you're going to simplify this, ठीक है? अच्छा, ये सारा clear है? Formulas वगैरह. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
अच्छा, फिर अब वो reactions, equations वगैरह उन पे आ जाते हैं. ठीक है? Remember, this is just a recap. क्योंकि moles में मेरे ख्याल से 50% of a moles question is you know what the equation is, you know what the ratio is. क्योंकि अगर equation वो recipe नहीं पता ना कि तो how would you solve a moles question? तो acids and bases, ठीक है? What's an acid? Remember, it's a proton donor. This is कोई और definition नहीं लिखनी. This is the exact definition. That's it. What's a base? It's a proton acceptor. उसके पीछे लॉजिक क्या थी? Why is acid bases important? क्योंकि दुनिया में ना planet Earth के ऊपर 70% of the Earth's crust and pretty much everything else is water. We are water. Plants are water. We are full of water. Everything is full of water. You dig the ground, everything is full of water. ठीक है? जमीन को खोदो, अंदर से पानी निकल रहा होता है. So water is everywhere on planet Earth. So the entire chemistry of planet Earth revolves around water, which is why there is chemistry happening on planet Earth, and there's no chemistry where there is no water. Mars के ऊपर कोई water नहीं है. There's no water on the moon as well. So why is water important? Because particles can float around in water, and if they float around, they collide with each other. If they collide, the old bonds get broken and new bonds are formed, and chemistry happens. So which is why there's so much reactions happening on planet Earth. If there is no water, you need a medium in which the particles can move around. If there is no medium, particles would not be able to move around, and they would not be able to collide with each other. There would be no collisions. The water enables collisions to happen. Water enables every reaction to happen. So यानी हम oxygen breathe करते हैं, तो how is the oxygen carried to my cells? उसको पानी में dissolve करते हैं. The water is the one that takes it. I mean, blood is water basically. So everything, the medium is very important. So on planet Earth, we have water, which is our medium in which everything happens. Or water has two ions. Some of the water molecules, they break down and they produce H+1 and OH-1 ions. And they produce an equal quantity. But what happens is, if you add an acid molecule to it, then the quantity of H+1 increases and the quantity of OH ions decreases. An acid is a molecule that produces a lot of H+1 ions. A base is a molecule that accepts H+1 ions. So what the base does is, in normal water, the two ions are produced in equal quantity, but in acid, there's more H+1 and there's less OH ions in water because the acid itself produces a lot of H+1 ions. And a base is a molecule that removes the H+1 ions from water and increases the OH ions. So there's a constant balance. If the human body, in every cell there's water, in your blood there's water, everywhere there's water. So a balance is going to be maintained, and that's your pH. That measures so pH basically measures that. Okay, if H+1 and OH ions are in equal quantity, that's neutral. If there's more H+1 compared to OH ion, that means there's an acid added to it. If there's less H+1, that's a basic medium, okay? So, and reactions are very sensitive to pH. Your stomach is acidic. That means, Alicia, I'll share these notes, okay? So now the thing is, reactions are very sensitive to pH. So remember, planet Earth, everything is happening in water. Every particle is floating around in water, and they're bumping into each other. But the water is going to affect every reaction. If your stomach medium is acidic, that means all the reactions that are happening in your stomach, they need more H+1 ions. I mean, some reactions need OH ions, some reactions need H+1 ions. Some reactions need both of them equally. So the pH, every reaction is very sensitive to pH. Every reaction, like plants would grow at a very specific pH. I mean, we humans, when we consume water, we want it to have a kind of a specific pH. Your stomach wants the solution to have more H plus ions, because all the reactions in the stomach probably depend on H plus ions. There might be some other reactions. I think your blood is slightly basic. I'm not sure, but your blood is slightly basic. So all the reactions that are happening in your blood, they would kind of want a slightly higher concentration of OH ions. So anyways, they're very, very sensitive to pH. So acids are those molecules that increase the amount of H plus ions in water. Like if your stomach is acidic, that means your stomach molecules or enzymes or whatever cells are producing a lot of H plus ions. So an acid is a molecule which is something like this. It gives off H plus ions. The only way it can give off H plus ions is if it has H plus ions. So every acid is a combination like this. It's H plus 1 attached to something. These are mineral acids. Hydrochloric acid, you should remember the names as well. You can remember this should be on your fingertips as well. What is phosphoric acid? You should exactly know it's H3PO4. Which two ions make up phosphoric acid? It's basically a combination of H plus 1 with PO4 minus 3 ions. So you should know which ions actually make this acid. What is nitric acid? It's H plus 1 combined with NO3 minus 1, which is basically HNO3. Then you have your organic acids as well. So your organic acids are molecules which also, I mean, they're exactly, it's H plus 1 attached to something. So like if I give you an example of citric acid, so citric acid molecule would kind of look something like this if we get, yeah, actually we didn't get it. Molecule structure. Yep, this is a citric acid molecule. So what happens when citric acid reacts, this H plus 1 over here at the ends, this one and this one, 3 of them, they all break off and they're released as H plus 1. So citric acid produces H plus 1 ions when you dissolve it in water. So you must remember, so we're going to do organic acids later, but you must know these formulas by heart. And then you've got bases. Bases are, bases accept H plus ions. Now, the only way they can accept H plus ions is, I don't know why I wrote down positive ions. So bases are any negative ion. Usually it's an oxide or a hydroxide or a carbonate or NH3. It's anything that's capable of accepting H plus ions. So O minus 2 can accept or gain H plus ions. It can remove H plus ions from water. It can decrease the quantity of H plus ions. So O minus 2 would accept H plus ions to form water. OH minus 1 would also do the same thing. Carbonate can do the same thing. Ammonia can do the same thing. So they all are basic. So you've got an oxide. These negative ions cannot exist alone. There must be some positive ion that would be next to them. So it might be a metal oxide or a metal hydroxide or a metal carbonate. So these are your bases. And here is the first reaction that you should know of. And this reaction, इसका एक second. So the first reaction, metal hydroxide with an acid produces salt and water, and the same applies to, it should be a metal oxide as well. पता नहीं यहाँ पे नहीं लिखा लेकिन, sorry, it's written metal oxide or hydroxide. So what happens is a metal hydroxide reacting with an acid, the acid releases the H plus 1, the base releases the OH ion, the H plus 1 gets accepted by the OH ion to form water. But the simple way to write this reaction is when you have a base reacting with an acid, every time the salt is going to be produced in the same way. The H is going to be knocked out and replaced by the other metal ion, which is Mg in this case. So it's going to be magnesium nitrate plus H2O. बस ये ख्याल रखना है कि every time you should do the crisscross, which means like even if you're making the salt, it's going to be Mg plus 2 NO3 minus 1, so it's going to be Mg NO3 twice. Same scenario over here, aluminum hydroxide reacting with HCl. Get rid of the H, replace it with aluminium. So it's going to be aluminium and Cl. Aluminium is plus 3, Cl is minus 1. Do the crisscross again when you're making formulas. Al is plus 3, Cl is minus 1. So you're going to get AlCl3 and water. Here आपके पास you've got calcium hydroxide with phosphoric acid. So calcium, get rid of the H and replace it with calcium. So it's going to be calcium and PO4. Do the crisscross, calcium is plus 2, PO4 is minus 3. So if you do the crisscross, it's going to be Ca. अच्छा तो क्या आएगा? It's going to be Ca is plus 2 and PO4 is minus 3. So if you do the crisscross, it's going to be Ca3 PO4 twice plus water. फिर ये सारी equations थी. We can try doing a couple of them over here. Okay, sodium hydroxide, it's Na is plus 1 and OH is minus 1. So it's going to be NaOH plus phosphoric acid, which is, remember, you have to remember this, is H3PO4. अब वो ढूंढे कि बनेगा क्या? So how is the salt going to be produced? Just get rid of the H and replace it with Na. So it's going to be Na and PO4. But do the crisscross again. It's Na is plus 1, PO4 is minus 3. So it's going to be Na3PO4 plus H2O. अगली वाली भी कर लेते हैं. It's iron 3 hydroxide. So it's Fe. Fe is plus 3. Hydroxide is OH minus 1. So it's going to be FeOH3 plus किस साथ reaction है? Phosphoric acid के साथ. अच्छा, get rid of the H, replace it with iron. So it's going to be FePO4. PO4 is minus 3, Fe is plus 3. So it's going to be, जब charges equal होते हैं, just don't do anything. It's Fe3PO4 plus H2O. Aluminium oxide. Aluminium is plus 3. Oxygen, Ide is just oxygen, group 6 minus 2. So it's going to be Al2O3 plus sulfuric acid is H2SO4. The salt is going to be, get rid of the H, replace it with aluminium. So it's going to be aluminium SO4. Do the crisscross again. So it's going to be Al2SO4. And so on. इसका भी कर लेते हैं. Copper 1 oxide. So that means copper is plus 1. Oxygen is group 6. So it's going to be CO2O plus phosphoric acid. Salt and water. Salt would be, get rid of the H, replace it with Cu and plus H2. So ये सारा clear? This is the first equation. Is this clear?
Sir?
हाँ जी.
Sir, less reactive तो वैसे भी नहीं होंगे ना?
कौन से less reactive?
अगर let's suppose less reactive मतलब elements आ गए तो उनकी तो कोई displacement नहीं होगी.
नहीं, displacement नहीं है. This is an acid based reaction. Either reactivity does not matter. Clear?
Yes sir.
मतलब इसके अंदर reactivity matter नहीं करती. वो displacement होता है. जो displacement reactions थे ना, वो तो शुरू में थे ना, वहां पे reactivity matter करती है.
सॉरी, मुझे लग रहा था आप मेटल्स मतलब मेटल्स के करवा रहे थे वो तो इसलिए सॉरी.
नहीं ठीक, ये अभी पहले है ना, ये बेस प्लस एसिड यानी मेटल ऑक्साइड और मेटल हाइड्रोक्साइड. ठीक है, यहाँ पे रिएक्टिविटी मैटर करेगी. यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ भी है, सम मेटल्स आर वेरी रिएक्टिव व्हाइल अदर्स आर वेरी अनरिएक्टिव. तो मेटल प्लस एसिड प्रोड्यूसेस सॉल्ट प्लस H2. इसके अंदर भी सॉल्ट सेम बनेगी एक्सेप्ट हाइड्रोजन गैस बनेगी. मेटल रिएक्टिव विद एन एसिड प्रोड्यूसेस सॉल्ट प्लस H2. सॉल्ट उसी तरह बनेगी. H हटाओ, उसकी जगह Mg ले आओ. H हटाओ, उसकी जगह एल्यूमिनियम ले आओ. हर दफा क्रिस क्रॉस दोबारा करना पड़ेगा। तो यहाँ पे एग्जांपल्स तो नहीं गिवन, लेकिन दिस इज दैट रिएक्शन, ठीक है, कि बैरियम को अगर मैं फास्फोरिक एसिड के साथ रिएक्ट करूंगा ना, तो H हटाओ, उसकी जगह बैरियम ले आओ, सो इट्स गोइंग टू बी बैरियम एंड PO4 प्लस H2। वो बैरियम और PO4 को ना दोबारा से क्रिस क्रॉस करो, इट्स +2 एंड दिस इज -3, सो दिस वुड बी बैरियम 3 एंड PO4 वुड बी ट्वाइस। क्लियर है ये?
सर
हाँ जी।
सर ये क्लास जब एंड हो जाए, आप जनरल फार्मूलाज अलोंग विद ये जो रिएक्शंस आपने करवाए ये अपलोड कर सकते हैं आप?
नहीं, इसकी PDF की बात कर रहे हो?
नहीं सर, जो मतलब आपने जो जनरल लिखवाया था अमोनिया के साथ एसिड रिएक्ट करे तो ये रिएक्शन होगा, और उसके अलावा जो आपने मतलब फार्मूलाज लिखवाए थे मोल्स के,
हाँ,
वो अपलोड कर देंगे?
नहीं ये तो PDF है, ये तो मैं अभी भेज देता हूँ ना, इसका तो कोई मसला नहीं है। और इस पर भी हमने सिर्फ पहले ही प्रैक्टिस किया, ठीक है। तो ये मैं भेज रहा हूँ, ये मैं भेज रहा हूँ, ठीक है, अभी भेज रहा हूँ। क्लास का टाइम हो गया, तो कल कंटिन्यू करेंगे। ऐसे ये बस देख लो कि ये मैं भेज रहा हूँ, अभी भेज रहा हूँ, ठीक है।
सर
हाँ जी।
और रिएक्शंस को लाइक मेमोराइज करने में हमें स्टोइकियोमेट्री में ज्यादा एडवांटेज मिल सकता है?
देखो वो तो स्टोइचियोमेट्री जो है ना, वो तो काम ही नहीं करेगी अगर तुम्हें इक्वेशन ही नहीं पता। जैसा मैंने यहाँ पे लिखा था रिएक्शन, मैंने लिखा था कि क्वेश्चन इस तरह आया हुआ, 20 grams of MgCO3 reacts with 100 cm of phosphoric acid। तो जब तुम्हें इक्वेशन लिखनी नहीं आती तो बाकी काम किस तरह करोगे फिर? समझ आई बात?
या सर।
अगर तो उन्होंने इक्वेशन लिख के दे दिया, वो तो चलो, तो उन्होंने तुम पे एहसान किया कि इक्वेशन उन्होंने बना के दे दी है। लेकिन लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स इक्वेशन होती नहीं है, मिसिंग होती है, वो आपको खुद ही पता होनी चाहिए कि इक्वेशन क्या है, ठीक है। मतलब
या
50%
सर।
ऑफ द टाइम्स मेरे ख्याल से इक्वेशन नहीं लिखी होती, क्वेश्चन में लिखी नहीं होती। वो आपने खुद ही रेशो फिगर आउट करना होता है, खुद ही बताना होता है कि इक्वेशन क्या है, ठीक है। चलो ठीक है, ये मैं भेज रहा हूँ, PDF में भेज रहा
ओके सर।
हूँ। ओके, अल्लाह हाफिज।